It is my pleasure to introduce to you David Rice. David serves as the San Diego Zoo Global Director of Architecture and Planning for the San Diego Zoo and San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Projects include multi-million-dollar zoological exhibits and visitor facilities. David received his Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Arizona, where he also serves for the University of Arizona's Distinguished Visiting Alumni Studio. He was named Corporate Architect for the state of California in 1991. He is a member of the American Institute of Architects and was honored with the distinction of being elected into the College of Fellows in 1998. Please join me in welcoming David Rice.
The zoo's 100 years old this year. I can read too. Pretty good for an architect. I was a swimmer in high school. I grew up in Michigan, and I was okay. My claim to fame was I was in the same pool as Mark Spitz. It'd be a mistake to call it a race. So I'm going to talk. I'm the anti-Keith. I am going to overwhelm you with slides. I've got quite a bit to show you. I've been asked to talk about the history of the zoo and the safari park, history of zoo design, and what concerns for the future. So the zoo is one that's 100 years old. It's known for its collection. It's known for an intimate experience. The animals at the zoo are it's a much more tropical collection than the collection at the park. Known for mixed species exhibits like here with the orangs and the siamangs. It's well known for being a botanical garden. I'm not going to talk a lot about the botanical side of it. It has a fabulous bird collection. The biggest bird collection that's ever been put together by man anywhere. Not going to talk as much about that because it's easier to show you the megavertebrates, the charismatic guys, and we're certainly known for having a very diverse collection and an endangered collection, and for the breeding at the zoo. The safari park is. The zoo is really close to the coast, and so it has what I call a small thermometer. Not a big variation in the temperature. The park is inland far enough that it's a bigger thermometer. It's known for its large exhibits. It has individual exhibits that are twice as big as the usable space in the zoo, as big as what's inside of the fence for an individual exhibit, full of herd animals. What's becoming known for is the safari experience, where you can choose from a menu of things and get out and see the herd animals in these great big exhibits, and get up close to them. Actually, very, very close to them. It too is known for breeding. Everybody knows that the rhinos are in trouble worldwide. There's been a very, very successful breeding collection of rhinos at the park since it opened in '72. That's the first baby white rhino born at the park, and this is one that's pretty close to number 94. You would expect that we have the highest standards of care. The best management practices here would be exemplary, and we like to believe that that's the case. This is a model for a research center that's up at the park. There's on the right here. That's hospital. It's about 50,000 square feet. It was completed first, and next to it is the institute. It's a laboratory space that's also about 50,000 square feet. That's the hospital. It was actually completed in 2001. The hospital's just an awesome, really awesome thing. It's set up for the collection. Like this, it's the opposite of what you see as a hospital when you take your pet to the vet. This is not a meow bow wow operation, because they do everything up to rhino-sized animals there. So, some of the collection is more labor intensive than others. Elephants are a prime example. They don't have hooves. They have skin on their feet, and their feet need lots and lots of care. Infected feet is used to be one of the major causes of elephant mortality in the wild. And that work is done in front of the guests, so that they can learn about what it takes to take care of animals in captivity. This is the outside of the institute. Like I said, it's 50,000 square feet. There's over 100 scientists that work there. There's 7 major divisions: plant ecology, animal ecology, behavioral ecology, reproductive physiology, genetics, and they're doing work not only on the animals that are within our collection, but the animals across the country and actually worldwide. So what's going on here? What are they doing? They're ultrasounding the panda. Pandas are a good story. When the decision was made to really get involved in the panda population and panda conservation, the population of pandas was supposed to crash right about now. So there's been a lot of work done. One of the nice things is that we've had 6 panda births at the zoo, but that's just a drop in the bucket. There's now over 100 pandas in Wulong, and it's because of the work that was done by our team. They figured out a lot about the panda biology, and a lot about how to try and get these animals to breed. One of the really big tricks is that ultrasound, that they figured out how to work with mom, because pandas lots of times have twins, and what traditionally happened is that only one of the twins would survive. And so they figured out a way of getting the formula so that it was pretty close to mom's milk, and get the mom to say, "Here, if you'll give me that baby, I'll give you this baby." So, two for the price of one. And it's hard enough to just make one. So that was a big move. This is what we call the condominium. We have all these different programs in a lot of different places. We have lots of partners. Like I used to be jealous of the Bronx Zoo, because they had quite a few programs in different places, but they were theirs, and so now I really appreciate the part where we have partners. So like condors, the LA Zoo was one of the partners. When the court battle was over and we brought them in out of the wild, there were 22 birds. The geneticists figured out that, fortunately, they weren't all really well related. We didn't have the rulers of Europe problem where everybody's related. There's some unrelated birds, and the geneticists could figure that out, and so we could get the right birds together. And so now there's more than 300. And we have been able to release them back into the wild in Mexico, Arizona, Northern California. There's some less spectacular things that have been released, like the yellow-legged frogs. which is this example. Arabian oryx. Arabian oryx, another species that was just about gone. Worked in this case with the Phoenix Zoo and got the population built up enough that they were released in the Middle East. So we've gotten back to that. So here's a map that I've cut in half. Here's the New World half. So this represents the New World program. So there's 140 programs worldwide, and in 80 different countries that are either ours or preferably something that's shared. So you want to pick one? Giraffes, good choice. Man, that high-tech computer thing they have going. So, thank you, Joe. So, so northern Kenya. So, hey, once again, hey, we all know that rhinos are in big trouble. They're being poached at a tremendous rate. What lots of us don't know is that the problem extends to giraffes now. There's more than 10 giraffes being poached every day. So the partnership in North Kenya is with the people. There's several conservancies, and we're working closely with them to protect the giraffes from poaching, and to help them with raising orphan giraffes. And because we have lots of experience with helping along those lines, because mom doesn't always take care of the giraffe, and they're not expendable, and it's trying to stem this incredible tide. So there's lots of good news. This is really scary news. This is a real challenge. The wild places are being encroached on in such a way, and people in third world countries are, it's just too big of an opportunity to sell that ivory. And it's the kind of thing that, hey, there's ivory being sold in the United States. It's the kind of thing that we can all try and have some concern about, and maybe try and do some good. So this is our partner in the Middle East. That's Sheikh Sultan. Fellow shaking his hand is our CEO, Doug Myers. We've been partners with them for about 9 years now. Abu Dhabi has their national zoo site. It's a beautiful piece of desert. It's in a lane. It's about equal distance to a lane from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, but it's flat. The scheme is similar to the safari park. What lots of you would know as the wild animal park, and we've rebranded because of the safari experience. So there's a village. In the big structure. The big structure is a desert learning center that's in that village, and there's exhibits that they're building in this village experience. So the village will have deserts of the world. They did a smart thing. They're going to do they can do something that they can do really well, and then they have very, very big field exhibits. So we'll have mixed species. So there's an African, an Arabian, an Asian, different field exhibits. And so now we've taken that land and contoured it, and started to make it simulate that wild place, and the visitors will see this, will have this experience on the ground. So it'll be like the Animal Kingdom experience, where the vehicle is on the ground in with the animals. So it's very much like being on safari. They already have a very, very nice collection that they've had for quite some time, and so there's Arabian oryx again. So how did this happen? That's a map of San Diego in 1868. So there's the bay and the downtown. What I call your attention to is this thing over here called City Park. So there's a population of 2,310 people, and what every little fishing village needs is a couple square miles of City Park. I mean, that's what I'd do. Set aside some City Park. So this is shortly before they made their next big decision in 1910. Expos were a very popular thing around the world. So this little fishing village, now 37,000 people, decided that they were going to have an expo. Really? And they were going to have it for the opening of the Panama Canal. So they had 5 years to build their expo. And sure enough, they did. That's a photo from then. And it, here's all this Spanish Revival building that they put in for an expo. Amazing. I'm from a conservation organization, but we all know that in 5 years we'd still be doing the EIR in public comment. Part of the expo was a menagerie. So there was a collection of small cages with some dogs and cats, and famously a lion. So this is our founder. He's Dr. Harry Wegeforth. He was a medical doctor. He was a young guy. He was a little older in this photo, but he was 35. And he went to the city and he said that he was going to form a zoological society and that they would take over the care of the animals that were in the expo. And started making a pest of himself. He did a lot of the initial planning for how the zoo would be laid out, and he was quite the salesman. It took, like Keith, it took seven years to secure that marriage. It took me 7 years of sales to convince them to make a change in the presentation style at the zoo. He went to the city, and I guess maybe they didn't want him to take care of the animals, so they let him have the animals. And the next thing he wanted was land. So he again made a pest of himself, and so they said that he could have what they considered to be up on the north side, a hilly, pretty useless portion of Balboa Park. Here's 150 acres. We'll make you a deal. You take the land. You send us $1 a year, and you never come back. Which was the biggest favor they could have done for us, because we were independent. We're not a city zoo. We're not part of the Park and Rec budget. We can be as good as we can be from the beginning, and it's on us. So that worked out, and the hilly useless thing is actually a pretty nice site. So this male lion was Dr. Harry's inspiration for wanting to do this zoo. What are we going to do with Rex the lion? Backing up just a little bit, there's Carl von Linnaeus, guy the father of the taxonomic classification, and so he started this taxonomic organization that is still used today. And there's our friend Charlie Darwin, a naturalist. So institutions are a reflection of us, of what we value, of what we know. And so in the 1800s, we were gathering information and knowledge about animals, wild animals, and an interest in them. And so in 1827, the Regent's Park was opened in London. And it was laid out in a taxonomic form. So there's, the bears were in pits close together. It was all, in Regent's Park example, it was gilded. There was a lot of gilded cages, but there's other zoos that were much more like jails. All right. There was also this. This romantic age where beauty was paramount, and the idea of beautiful landscapes, and there were landscape designers doing these beautiful landscapes. So what happened is in Germany, Karl Hagenbeck built a zoo in 1909, and he had some. This example still exists, so this is a better image than the black and whites. And so he did that beautiful landscape. So here's flamingos and zebras, and in the back there's lions. You have this picturesque view. The nice thing was that he was the first one other than to start designing his zoos with moats. So here's Rex's new home. Got him out of the cage and put him into a moated exhibit. This is Miss Scripps. She donated the money to our friend Dr. Harry to build this exhibit, and the people of San Diego and now nationally, internationally have supported us to be able to build the facilities. The collection at the zoo was initially laid out in this taxonomic form. So this is a reflecting pool, and what's behind it is what was called the monkey yard. So that you see that's something you typically see, particularly like in the temperate zoos where these tropical animals have to be brought in the wintertime. You have a cat house and the bird house and etc. The reptile house. And so this is Louis Gill. He's the nephew of one of San Diego's probably most famous architect. And so he designed a number of structures. And so this is the hospital, the first hospital, still stands. It was built in 1923, and it was also the research building. Because research was, talk about where we are with it now, but it was important from the very beginning for this institution. And so, early on, lots of it had to do with wildlife disease. That's one. We still have that as a division because it's figuring out what makes them sick and how to cure it is important, and it applies not only to our captive population, but it applies to wild populations as well, where we can. It's like another crisis: frogs, maybe a fungus. How many of these things can disappear and we're going to still be here? So one of the bright young shining stars at the zoo early on was a vet. His name's Charlie Schroeder, and Charlie was interested very much in the overall health and cleanliness, hygiene. He started with people you do an autopsy, with animals you do necropsy, and so he was interested in studying what it was that had caused the death of an animal, so you could try and keep it from happening again. You see, there's hygiene. See, look at that. Any guy that's going to brush a camel's teeth, it's obviously German. This is one of the early exhibits, also still there. Scripps cage, another gift from Miss Scripps. It's gone through about 4 different iterations. That was so good, why not do another one? So we built one on the other side of the same mesa. It's also had about 4 generations. The collection was man, they were just like everybody else. They were stretching the money as best they could, and it was San Diego's a Navy port, and it was easier to get some of the collection from the Pacific Rim than it was to get it across country, and so there was always an emphasis on these animals from the Pacific Rim, Australia, Asia. So the koalas, the curator is holding a couple of koalas in the mid-20s. So koalas have been part of the collection, still are for a very long time. Galapagos have had a connection with the Galapagos also from very, very early on, and still do. We're one of the major supporters of the foundation in Galapagos. Elephant seals. So it was quite a bit of the collection in the beginning had a lot of marine animals in it. So elephant seals. The logo for a very long time. The logo when I got there 41 years ago was an elephant seal. Fur seal. So there's a couple of things. There's this Independence, not a city zoo. That was an advantage. There was that very pretty site, the nice climate in San Diego. You could do those you didn't have to build a house. You didn't have to have the animals come in the wintertime because it's close enough to subtropical that you can have the animals out all the time. So Dr. Harry tried between his practice and being the president of the society, he tried hiring a couple of directors. And it never really worked out. So this is Belle Benchley. He was Dr. Harry's. She was Dr. Harry's executive assistant. I don't think he called her secretary. I think she might have been the very first executive assistant, and she ran the zoo. When he wasn't there, when he was traveling getting animals, she ran the zoo, and there have been. And it's another one of our traditions. We've had a long line of women in senior positions that have been very, very strong leaders, but guys have done all right too. So here's that big arch cage. It was viewed from the outside to begin with. It became the largest walk-through aviary in the world when they put a path through the center of it. The zoo went, so there's a little bit of a design trend here that was pretty much international. There was this modernist thing. It's like, oh, it looks like the Anaheim Convention Center. I wonder if that was the inspiration. So this was in the children's zoo when it had a designed a zoo just for children, and it was opened in 1959. The artist that was on staff that was responsible for planning design that hired me. This was his first project, Charlie Faust. So these are open-molded exhibits for gorillas. great apes. So they had the orangs and the gorillas were in these spaces. They were built in about 1962. We'll come back to that. So here's what the place looked like in at about that time, mid 60s, and you can maybe start to feel a little bit of what's going on. These are high points, mesas, and these are valleys. It's that hilly site, and it's pretty well filled up, and it's all laid out so that the cats are together, and the dogs are together, and the bears are together, and the primates are together, because that made sense, because that was the way we thought about things. Some of the big herd animals weren't doing very well in this situation. That the natural numbers where you'd have some oh no, point at me, some dominant male that had taken over a harem, and what he had was a female, and in a smaller space. This wasn't working, and there was some land available just north of town in San Pasquale Valley that Dr. Schroeder talked the city into letting us occupy, and we started moving some of these herd animals out to that space, and they thrived. It made a big difference. And so Schroeder would take people out there and show it to them, and they said, "Wow, it looks just like Africa. You should open this up to people." Another gate. Yeah, do we really want to do that? We're going to have another gate. Schroeder was friends with Walt Disney, and so, hey, Disney had just opened up a new park. What's it like to open up a new park? And so he got some advice, and ignored it, and went ahead and decided that he would open up a new park. There's a scary thing. There's a vet that happens to be a zoo director out staking the site. Your worst nightmare, right? What do you think, Keith? Good idea? So the park was inspired by, they did lots of site visits, and so it was inspired by examples from Africa, and a lot, like initially half the collection was Asian, but the African influence was very strong. So this is a king's burial tomb in Uganda that was the inspiration for the entry building at this park. And so it was, as I said, it was the big idea is that there was this village, and so you visited the village, and there were exhibits in the village, and then you went out to see the big field exhibits by riding on an electric train. So that's our interpretation of that burial tomb. This is what the place looked like in 1972. It was a really hot summer that we opened for, and there wasn't hardly any shade. I've talked to people that like years later said, "Oh yeah, I was there when it opened, and I promised myself I would never go back. It was so hot." That's some of those big field exhibits, and on the outside edge, that's where the electric train ran. Carried about a little over 100 people. It's still that romantic image, right? Here we got beautiful vistas filled with herd animals, and they're and they're in these moated spaces, and it's hard to tell exactly where it starts and stops. It's a little too easy to figure it out because you're up high enough that you can see the whole thing. I remember the first time I visited the park, somebody said, the driver of the train, I wasn't an employee yet, said, and that's East Africa. It's as big as the entire San Diego Zoo. My companion turned to me and I said, nah, doesn't look that big, not from this point of view. So again, that's what the zoo looked like when I arrived. It was laid out with those exhibits along the side of a road. So here's the service road, bus road. A bus ride has always been a famous thing that you do at the zoo. Next to the road was a sidewalk and a handrail, and on the other side of that, moated exhibits. And it wasn't all working. The gorilla, see, here he is. He's staring at guests. That's threat behavior. He's telling them to stay back. And he's on guard all the time. Here, see her? She's hiding back there. She's letting him do his thing. And we had one baby gorilla in the history of the zoo. This is not working. So it was decided that when I first started, that was made a priority that the great apes we needed to do something about the great apes because they were top priority for starting to develop a self-sustaining collection. We were doing pretty well with some things, but in critical areas we were not doing very well. And it's it fits in with the like this overall timing. We turned around and we looked at the world and saw it as spaceship Earth. This whole different image of it. So instead of looking at it in this taxonomic way, we started to look at it in this environmental way, and you can take and look at how much precipitation and temperature there is in a place, and if you know that, it'll tell you what kind of environment is there, and because of the temperature aspect of it, it tends to run around the world in bands. And so you have a very cold, actually fairly dry place, like the Arctic, or a warmer, much warmer, dry place that's a desert. If you add enough water to it and cool it off a little bit, you get a green desert. Warm it up, add more water, you get or about the same temperature, you get savanna. So what was interesting to zoo people is that you could then look at the animals that lived in these places and the plants that were in these places, and they were all these really beautifully, finely tuned to be there, to take advantage of what was given to them in terms of temperature and precipitation, and in lots of cases there's symbiotic relationships between them. So the leap was to think about organizing the collection around the things that live next to each other. Here there's Asian animals. Well, okay, so here's Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. So they have a really, really pretty piece of desert, and they did a smart thing. They concentrated on what's there. So they do indigenous species, and they have built exhibits into this beautiful piece of desert that are fairly seamless. Like that's all artificial rock work, And so you have this experience where you're on a trail, and you're finding animals along the side of the trail, sort of like you do in the wild. What I was told when I was 25 is that this is really all you can do, because it needs to be clean and sanitary, and you've got all these limitations on what you can do. And so I met some young landscape architects and architects from Seattle at a firm called Jones and Jones, and they had another idea. They were going to do in the temperate rainforest of Seattle. They were going to do a tropical rainforest. They were going to fill the thing up with plants, and they were going to do sort of like Arizona Sonora's example, where they were going to bring that landscape out into the visitor space, and they're going to immerse the visitors in a tropical simulation. And they're going to put the gorillas in it too. Well, it was a shocking thing for zoo people, because you can't do that. They'll tear it up in a couple of days. But they didn't, and they thrived. It's like that example of the park where we put the herd animals into these big spaces in natural numbers, and they did really well. So can't we just do more of that? I want some of that. So first big project I was involved in was for orangs, and in this case used at the zoo, used the topography to my advantage, and made it so that you look through. So here's a thing that's supposed to simulate a tree. There's a tree that's in the exhibit, and there's trees that are outside of the exhibit, or there's trees that are inside of the exhibit, and so it makes the barrier go away. I think that's an important, important thing for guests, is to not be thinking about the part where there's the container. The container dissolves, and you just concentrate on the animal and the animal's behavior, what's going on inside of there, and in a best case scenario, we've provided for the orangs to be orangs. And it's that mixed species exhibit, so that's a Simang with the orang. I didn't know how that was going to work out. The male Simang would tease the adult male orang, and so finally, after watching, the orang figured out that he be fast and I be slow, but I'm smart, and so he finally waited. Oh, look, I've got you. And, oh, you're getting away. Oh, no, you're coming back. But it all turned out fine. They made friends. And once again, you provide them the right kind of space, and what you get is breeding. That's famous orang. His name's Ken Allen. As long as we provide them what they really need, they do really well, and they do not try to escape. But unless it's they're just mischievous. He was mischievous. This is a copy in Africa. So copies are these rocky outcroppings that occur in the savanna, and there's animals that stay there that are not part of the big migration. So this is our copy. And so the idea was that we immersed the guest into that landscape. And these are little antelope, but they again don't migrate. They're highly adapted to live on the rocks in the copy. this is one of the things is that the like there was about inside of the fence there was 100 acres. We've been working at making more usable space, and so we're pushing on the borders to get that usable space. So here's the bus service, and instead of a sidewalk on the side of that, we now have a visitor path that's over to the side and moated exhibits. So this was our first big example. The copy and the orangs were like precursors to doing a big tropical thing with the guests immersed in a landscape. There's places where you view over moats, and there's places where you view through pavilions through glass. And so here's some people in one of the pavilions viewing. Here's viewing. That's the water level. There's a crocodile on the other side of the glass. As you go downhill, here's a small cat, fishing cat, really aquatic. If we put fish into his pool, he's in the pool, and the fish are in trouble. A marsh bird exhibit that was part of that experience. As you go downhill, this is pythons on the left, and tapirs, natural prey of tigers, on the right, and tigers. A couple different spaces where you can view in at the tigers at different pools. Some through glass, some over a moat. Okay, so finally get to do the gorillas. So here's a bridge and a waterfall. Gorilla space is relatively large. So here's Mimba. He was the last male that was in that old exhibit. No offspring. He was gone for a little bit, sent him to Cincinnati. He came back with his same group, and there's a mom, and what's in her lap you can't quite see, but I'll take my word for it, it's a baby. So about every other year we've been able to have babies in that space. Because it's so big, there's these different viewing areas, and so here's an opportunity to do some, like how big is a gorilla? How big is a gorilla hand as compared to my hand? About the same. Not yours. And there's several generations, and all that's in this situation, all that stress is gone, and that landscape is outside of the exhibit. There's a back moat, and they could, if they wanted to, go hide in the back moat and get away from us. They're about as curious about us as we are about them. Turns out that this is the smartest animal in the world. Even smarter. I was outsmarted by an orang. The orangs were outsmarted by sun bears. Here's a planning drawing for taking one of those canyons, pushing at the sides of it to get bigger space. There's the visitor path and exhibits along the side of it. Here's the scheme for the sun bear. So there's water moat in the front, and you go along the path, and you're not thinking about the barriers too much, and it all looks like it's eroded riverbank, and the sun bears are there, and there's a primate exhibit and a bird exhibit. The exhibit was designed around two elderly bears where we were trying to figure out whatever we could do to get them to be active. And I panicked at near the end and decided to sod the exhibit because the time frame was just too short. And what we put in it was not the two elderly bears. The curator came up with a little surprise for us at the very end. He had 6 juvenile delinquents. So the first thing they did was they tore apart all the dead wood, like, hey, that kind of makes it look natural. Well, they started breaking that up and they put it into the moat. And when they were done with that, they pushed the sod into the moat. They were literally using pieces of stick to roll it in. And then they did something that the orangs hadn't thought of that makes them the smartest animal in the world. They started working in teams because there was more sod and sticks right there if we could just get to them. And so one bear was like this along the wall. Another bear looked at the back of that one and said, ladder. And the 5 of them went right up his back and out. So he solved that by making the barrier not big enough to keep in one bear, but to keep in teams of bears working together. Bird exhibit. This is the second big arch cage. So there's an accessible elevated walk that's working its way down through the canyon, and so hippos, we think of them as this big, as a child, this big ponderous thing. They're actually a marine mammal. They just look like that when they go out to graze, because in their natural environment, you get scenes from Red October. They can actually move pretty fast. The cameraman had to save him. So here's a viewing pavilion. There's pretty big expanse of glass, about 100 feet of it, and they can go up on the beach. And so here trying to make that barrier go away by landscaping, and like the barrier really is the wall. The edge of the pool is the barrier in the back. And it worked. Yeah, it worked out. Baby hippos went sort of like when we're ready. So important not to forget the last of the apes. So this is the bonobo, the little chimp, the little smart chimp. Make love, not war. And the chimp in his space. So there's polar bears. So like this kind of recurring theme is that it's like the waterfall the waterfall, or the sculpture for gorillas. Like you got these different viewing locations. Having what we're looking for is a landscape immersion experience, that you're in the landscape. When we build these things, they are just moonscape. We have bulldozed everything in sight and dug trenches and put in utilities, just like everybody's projects, right? So then we have to landscape it to try and make it look tropical. So this is the biggest tree we've moved. It was the raft was about 35 feet across, and it's about 45 feet long, and you can see the guy. The tree was about 70 feet tall. Took one of the flat spaces in the zoo and contoured, and put the tree down in, carved out, put the tree down low, and put the walkway through it. And on the sides of it are aviary style exhibits for primates. So this is the walk threaded through the tree that's been moved. The walk is about where grade was when we first started the project. So this area was called Monkey Trails. It has a number of different mixed species exhibits, and so the little hippo, the pygmy hippo, is in with wolf guenons, and the wolf guenons just fly through there, and will miss and end up in the pool, and they come out just as fast as they went in. Still have koalas. Did a new thing for koalas 3 years ago. and it was a nice change. We used to have a lot of them that were off exhibit. They're all on exhibit in the new space. So this is a themed revenue unit. That's right next to gorillas. So it's supposed to look like it drains rain. Rains here a lot. Built to drain the water off of it. It's a tropical forest, right? That's the service venue, and this was the shop that was in that space. So this seemed to make sense. This is working for us. Let's do some of this at the safari park. So instead of having that big grand view from up on the monorail, on the electric train, let's get down inside and look out and see if the spaces don't look bigger. Sure enough. So looked at designing in these new paths that were down in the bottom of the spaces, and getting a different perspective, trying to get some layers of exhibits. So you might have leopards with baboons, with the field exhibit behind it. Selected a site. Look, it's already looking bigger. And installed a savanna landscape, and that's a revenue unit. These are lesser flamingos down on that pond that was so bare on the side of it. Some mixed species exhibits with fox and warthog, and cheetahs with the field exhibit behind it. So you get a sense of what the savanna is all about. So it'd be a good idea to finally do something that's much nicer for Rex's cousins. There's lions like those copies, that rocky outcropping. They like to hang out on that, particularly if they're fairly full, and look at what's on the menu for next week. And the same result. So there was the copy view. There's a view where you look across some savanna. And I'm sorry, if we just looked a little to the right, we could see giraffe, but the cubs are too cute. So here's a view looking back the other way with Nyala, and there's their barrier. There's another moat in here, and the lions thinking about it. A small viewing space that was simulated a research camp. Lions have occupied the researchers' truck. The latest thing that we opened was a thing called Tiger Walk at the Park, and for quite some time, it was working for us. I thought that this landscape immersion presentation scheme meant that there wasn't a whole lot of theme building. We did more theme building for tigers at Tiger Walk than we have done ever before. The biggest part of it is this longhouse. So you just kind of see it going this way and that way, and it sits on top of the animal management space. All these things take a tremendous amount of off exhibit space in order to provide the animals with the proper kind of care and divide them up, check them every night, inoculate them, separate them when necessary. So this great big guest space sits on top of the animal management spaces below, and it provides the opportunity to get in the glass viewing for the cats. What's coming next at the zoo is a couple of projects. One's called Africa Rocks. It has some more. It ties into the copy exhibit. It has more of small non-migratory animals from Africa and also Madagascar. So and should say some really nice landscape material. And it's big part of the collection is not just the animals, but it's the plant material. So here's a view of that's baboons viewed through glass. This is slender-snouted crocodile. There's a big waterfall element. There's a plaza with a little revenue, because how else are you going to pay for it? And there's penguins. What started as African penguins, jackass penguins from South Africa, not an Arctic penguin, but a subtropical penguin, just like there are in the Galapagos, but different subspecies. And now, joining the penguins there's going to be a fish collection. So it's we're going to do something we've only done a little bit of. So this is the underwater viewing, but there's also above water viewing. So the other project that we're just starting, here's our nice big hilly site. This green mask represents a lot of what it's really trying to represent is the upper portion of the zoo, that mesa. This is a canyon, and it comes up here. Here's the site that we're working in right this minute. It's that Africa Rock site, and that canyon divides the place in half. That's been a long time issue. We knew that was an issue for quite some time. And so they had done a couple things. Hey, there's a cable bucket ride. There's the bus. There's speed ramps. I'm sorry to have to report to all of you that the speed ramps have passed away. They're no longer. So we're going to replace them with an elevator bank, 3 elevators that bring you from down. This is where the pandas are. This is panda level. Bring you up to the mesa level, and a bridge that ties the front of the zoo to the back of the zoo. And all of that will be done for when we open Africa Rocks, because this view is from the bottom after having come out of where the penguins are and the fish, sharks. You're down here at pandas, and so now since the speed ramps are gone, there's a way to get up and out. And that does it. That's where we've been and where we're going.
In the future, now 100 years, a huge span, wonderful experience. So you have enough data to understand what's going to happen in the next 50 years. What is the challenge in the 100 years? And what are we going, what is it that we're experiencing, learning, and discovering?
So for us, the challenge is a couple of things. One is that self-sustaining collection. What is the collection? What's the collection in North American zoos going to look like in 50 years? Are all the zoos going to have the very same collection, or is there going to be some diversity? And is that collection really self-sustaining? is that even possible? That's a huge challenge. So, hey, we have another partner. We're working with Audubon Zoo in New Orleans. They have a big off-site area, and so we're going to work on breeding giraffes, okapi, several other things with them. When you look at that chart of precipitation and temperature, and hey, we all, there's hardly anybody that isn't admitting. Exxon admits that we're doing stuff to that. We're, okay, well, maybe the temperature was going to rise some, but we all admit that the climate change that we're seeing, we're a big driver, and all those, are all those plants and animals this all of a sudden going to, the plants are going to grow wheels and move to the proper place now? Oh, where I am now is too dry. That's scary. But there's another scary thing. It's what's happening in third world countries where, hey, these wild things are a food source or a revenue source. What can we do about that? And so that's where we're, we've done well enough that we're really pushing to try and make changes, and we're trying to partner with people. The real challenge to really partner with people that are on the ground in those places to try and act, to do something so that there are rhinos and giraffes in the wild. Like obvious big examples. Now that we've turned around the panda situation so they're not going to crash, that there's still pandas actually in the wild, that would be a good thing because there's lots of other things that live with pandas in that environment. So just because we save pandas, let's try and save the red pandas and the birds and everything else. There's a huge environmental issue. That's a big concern.
And also, do you have a vision of whether you have a lot of wonderful destination and it's all real, the use of technology and virtual reality, telepresence, to take people to the home of origin of these animals, or to take your experience and expand it beyond your borders? Do you see an application in there?
Someone just said the museums are scared. So we're a little scared. So what we'd like to do is find a way. Yeah, let's have you buy the technology, and we'll provide information that you can get on the thing that is going to be thrown away in a year and a half. And so we're working at that. Deborah says, "Hey, we're making strides in that direction," because we were chit-chatting in the back. But yeah, so that we see that coming. Our experience at this point is that people. It's like finding out that the information is available. That when they're on site, I'm here, and there's living things here for me to see. Well, okay, so there's more information, and I might like to get that when I get it home. So we're, that's a difference between us, I think, in, like listening this morning and museums, because they're not as many things moving makes a difference. There's lots of hey, so we once again we tie in. So Deborah's department coordinates with our curatorial staff, and so we have Panda Cam. You can see what the pandas are doing, or in a good year what the baby panda's doing. Condor Cam. All of that sort of thing that you can do at home.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. And everybody, we are out of time.